Imagine this for a second. You're out for a run. It's, I don't know, Tuesday evening maybe. The sun is just starting to dip below the horizon, and the air is crisp. Your shoes are slapping against the pavement. It's rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Left foot, right foot, breathe in, breathe out. You're not really thinking about anything specific. You're just in that flow state. Maybe you're vaguely stressing about an email you forgot to send, or you're wondering what's for dinner, or maybe you're just listening to the music in your ears. You're on autopilot. And then, just completely out of the blue, a thought intrudes. It's not a grocery list. It's not a work task. It is a morbid, heavy, kind of suffocating question that hits you right in the chest, and it just disrupts your rhythm completely.
What would my obituary say?
Exactly. And not the fantasy version, Not the one where you saved the world, cured a disease, and retired to a private island. The real one. If you dropped dead right there, on the sidewalk, mid-stride, shoes still tied, what does the paper say tomorrow?
It is a terrifying question.
Okay.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's such a jarring intrusion into what's supposed to be a healthy, life-affirming activity. And most of us, if we're being honest, we probably sprint away from that thought faster than we were running before.
Oh, absolutely.
We turn up the podcast volume, drown it out, just dissociate. Because staring directly at the summation of your own life while it's still happening, it's just incredibly uncomfortable. It almost feels forbidden.
Right. It feels like reading the last page of a book you're only halfway through. But today, we are diving into the mind of a man who didn't run away from it. His name is Jimmy Perez. And on a run just like that one, he had that exact thought. But instead of shaking it off, instead of sprinting faster to escape that, existential dread, he went home, opened his laptop, and he wrote it.
And we aren't just talking about some diary entry he hid under his mattress. What we're analyzing today is a blog post. It's titled My Obituary, and it was published on June 3, 2023. And maybe even more importantly, we're looking at the incredibly revealing comments section underneath it. This is a case study in what I would call a radical self-audit.
Radical self-audit. I like that term. It sounds kind of corporate, but in this context, it feels deeply spiritual, like he's auditing his own soul.
It's a bit of both, isn't it? I mean, it's taking the ledger of your life, the credits, the debits, the assets, the liabilities, and actually balancing the books before the fiscal year is over, so to speak. So the mission for this deep dive is to really unpack this document. We're going to look at how a self-proclaimed simple man with complex thoughts used the prospect of death to figure out how to live. And I want to be really clear to you, the listener, right up front. This isn't a story about a man dying. Jimmy is very much alive. This is a story about the utility of death.
It's that old philosophical concept, right? Memento mori. We hear that phrase a lot in self-help circles these days.
Precisely. Memento mori, Latin for remember you must die. It's a concept that dates back to the Stoics, to the Romans. There's that famous and maybe apocryphal image of a Roman general riding in a chariot during a triumph.
Oh yeah, I know this one.
The crowds are cheering, flowers are being thrown, and there's a slave standing behind him, just whispering in his ear.
Memento mori.
Memento mori, just to keep his ego in check, to remind him, hey, you're a god today, but you're worm food tomorrow.
That is a serious humbler. But, okay, Jimmy Perez isn't a Roman general in a chariot. He's a guy on a run, probably in a t-shirt and shorts. And what struck me immediately in the text is the very first pivot he makes. He has the thought, what would my obituary say? And his brain immediately offers a shortcut.
The path of least resistance.
Yeah.
The brain always looks for the easiest way out of a hard problem.
Right. He thinks, maybe I should ask someone else to write one for me. And it's such a human instinct. Hey, tell me how great I am. Tell me how you see me. It's this craving for external validation, isn't it? We want to see ourselves through rose-colored glasses held by someone else.
It is. But it's also a craving for protection. If I ask you to write my obituary, you're bound by a social contract to be nice.
You have to be.
You're not going to write, he was kind of a jerk in the mornings, he was petty about parking spots, and he never finished his projects. No. You're going to write, he was a spirited individual with many passions. We outsource our identity because we want the sanitized version. We want the PR release, not the internal memo.
But Jimmy catches himself. In the text, he just shuts that down instantly. He writes, immediately I thought that would be pretty egotistical. It felt as if I would be begging for good things to say about me.
And that right there is insight number one. He recognized that asking for an obituary is actually just fishing for compliments.
It's an ego trap.
A total ego trap. If you wanted the truth, the raw, unfiltered data of his life, he had to be the one to process it. He had to be the judge, the jury, and the biographer. He couldn't rely on the kindness of others to tell him who he was.
So he decides to do it himself. as a psychological exercise. He sits down to answer the question, can I write my own obituary?
Hmm.
And the result? Well, let's just say it is not the standard loving father, avid gardener, will be missed by his cat kind of fluff piece. It's dark, it's heavy, and it's surprisingly hopeful.
It's a documented transformation. But, to understand where he ends up, we really have to look at where he started. Because Jimmy Perez in this obituary describes a before picture that is, well, it's pretty intense.
Let's get into that. So this is section 1, the man before the obituary. He refers to himself in the third person throughout the text, which, by the way, is standard for obituaries, but it also creates this really interesting psychological distance.
It's a form of dissociation. It
Yeah.
allows you to look at Jimmy as a character in a story rather than me, the guy typing on this keyboard.
A mechanism for objectivity.
Exactly. It helps you critique the subject without feeling the immediate sting of shame.
So, Jimmy, the character starts off in a really rough place. He describes himself as a simple man with some complex thoughts, which is a nice little humble brag to start, but then he drops the hammer. He says he lived confused and rebelled early in his years.
And he just layers it on. He doesn't stop at rebel. He uses these really specific identifiers. Outsider, black sheep, outlaw. And then this phrase that really stuck with me, it resonated in my head. An angry young man full of pain.
An angry young man full of pain, that is. It's an archetype, isn't it? We've all known that guy. Maybe some of us have been that guy. It's the guy at the back of the class with the hood up. The guy who stares you down in traffic.
It's a very potent archetype. It's the James Dean figure, but without any of the Hollywood glamour. It's the person who feels that the world is fundamentally against them, so they preemptively strike back against the world. When he calls himself an outsider or a black sheep, he is identifying with his alienation. He's saying, I didn't fit in, and because I didn't fit in, I got angry.
It's a defense mechanism.
It's a total defense mechanism. If you reject the world before it can reject you, you feel safer. But you also end up completely alone.
And that anger wasn't just like teenage angst. It wasn't just listening to loud music and slamming doors. He clarifies the stakes. He writes that some gave up on him becoming a successful man, much less a man within the law.
A man within the law. That is such a crucial distinction. We aren't just talking about a guy who was grumpy.
No.
We are talking about criminality. We are talking about someone skirting the edge of society's rules. He admits that he was an outlaw. That implies he was operating by a different code, one that ran contrary to the safety and order of the community.
And he follows that up with a prediction he had for himself. He says in his 20s, he reached this critical decision point where he believed that if he didn't change, he would end up dead or in prison.
That is the binary of the desperate. Dead or in prison. There was no option C. Happy accountant living in the suburbs. In his mind, his trajectory only had 2 terminal stations.
Why do you think he felt that way? Is that a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy?
Oh, absolutely. When you adopt the identity of the black sheep, when you wear the outlaw badge with some kind of pride, you start to curate your reality to match that identity. You reject help because black sheep don't need help. You break rules because outlaws don't follow rules.
It's a feedback loop.
A feedback loop, exactly. And what Jimmy is describing here is the moment he realized that loop was tightening around his neck. This is what psychologists might call a crystallization of discontent. He looked at his future and he saw a cage or a coffin. That was it.
It's just brutal honesty, and that's what makes this document so weirdly compelling. Most obituaries are highlight reels. They're the Instagram feed of a life. He was captain of the football team. She volunteered at the soup kitchen. He was beloved by all. They gloss over the DUI or the divorce or the years of crippling depression. Jimmy starts with the mess. He puts the wreckage right on the front lawn.
He leads with the trauma. He writes about the downhill spiral many live in. And notice that phrasing, many live in. He's connecting his personal struggle to a universal one. He's not saying I was unique in my suffering. He's saying I was in that dark place where a lot of you are right now. It establishes credibility. If he just started with, I'm a great dad and I love life, you'd roll your eyes. You'd think, good for you, buddy. But because he starts with, I was almost a convict, you listen. You lean in.
He's building a narrative of redemption. But to have redemption, you have to have the sin first. You have to have the fall. You have to be in the pit to climb out of it.
Exactly. And he doesn't paint himself as a victim of that fall. This is a nuance I really want to highlight because in today's culture, it's very popular to externalize blame. But Jimmy writes about his childhood. Jimmy might have not had the perfect childhood, but overall it was not a bad one.
I found that so surprising. Usually, the angry young man narrative comes with a "my parents were monsters" backstory or "the system crushed me."
Right. It's very convenient to blame the environment. I was an outlaw because the system failed me. I was angry because my dad didn't hug me enough.
Hmm.
But Jimmy refuses that out. He says essentially, no, my childhood was okay. The anger, the rebellion, that was me. That was my reaction.
Yeah.
He takes full ownership of his shadow.
Why is that so important? Why not just blame the circumstances? It seems so much easier.
Because if the circumstances broke you, then you need the circumstances to fix you.
And good luck with that.
And let me tell you, the world is not in the business of fixing you. Circumstances rarely cooperate. But if you broke you, if you were the architect of your own downhill spiral,
Then you have the power to fix it.
then you have the power to build the ladder out. By owning the black sheep identity as a choice he made, or at least a reaction he controlled, he reclaimed the agency to choose something else. He took the pen back from the universe and said, I'll write the next chapter.
And choose something else he did.
Yeah.
He writes that from that point in his 20s, that dead or in prison crossroads, he became extremely hungry with life.
Hungry with life. I just love that phrasing. Not interested in self-improvement, not curious about wellness. Hungry. That is a visceral survivalist word.
It implies starvation.
Exactly. He was starving for a different existence. He was famished for something better than the cage or the coffin.
And he lists what he was hunting for. A never-ending quest for meaning, purpose, greatness, peace, and self-love.
Look at the order of operations there. It's so instructive. Meaning and purpose come first. Peace and self-love come last.
That's interesting.
I think that's profound. He realized he couldn't just love himself while he was acting like an outlaw. You can't love yourself when you're engaging in destructive behavior. Your conscience just won't let you. He needed a purpose first. He needed to be useful. He needed to be great at something. The peace is a byproduct of the purpose, not the other way around.
That makes so much sense. You can't just decide to have peace. You have to build the house that peace can live in. So let's move to section 2 then. The transformation. Because it's easy to write, I decided to change. It's really, really hard to actually do it. And Jimmy is careful not to make this sound like a movie montage.
The Rocky montage problem, yeah. We see the training sequence for 3 minutes with the uplifting music. He's lifting logs, he's running up steps, and we think change happens that fast.
Right. We think if we just buy the gym membership, we're fixed.
Jimmy explicitly corrects this. He writes, he at times made the journey seem effortless, but in truth, it took him many years for him to become whom we remember today.
Many years. That's the grind. That's waking up every single day and choosing not to be the angry young man. That's slipping up and starting over.
It's neuroplasticity in action.
Yeah.
Think about it. He spent 20-some years building the neural pathways of an outlaw. Every time he reacted with anger, every time he rebelled, he was paving that road in his brain, making it a superhighway. You don't overwrite that code in a weekend workshop. You don't fix it with one realization on a run. It takes years of conscious repetition to pave the new roads, the patience road, the responsibility road, and let the old ones grow over with weeds. He admits he battled many demons within. This was internal warfare.
And every war needs a cause. You can't just fight for the sake of fighting. You need something to fight for. And for Jimmy, that cause was biological. It wasn't abstract.
Fatherhood, the ultimate biological imperative.
He is completely unequivocal about this. He writes, he always gave his firstborn Isaiah credit for saving his life.
Saving his life. Again, we have to take him literally here. Remember the binary. Dead or in prison. Isaiah didn't just make him a nicer guy or give him reason to smile. Isaiah prevented him from dying or going to jail.
And then he mentions his other sons, JJ and Gabriel. He says when they arrived, his quest became that much more solid.
There is a powerful psychological shift that happens with parenthood. It's often called the expansion of self. Before kids, your self is contained within your own skin. Your survival instinct is about you. I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm angry. But when a child arrives, your self expands to include them. Suddenly, your survival is necessary for their survival. You are the infrastructure of their entire universe.
So he wasn't just staying out of prison for Jimmy anymore. He was staying out of prison for Isaiah.
Exactly. It's an external anchor. Willpower is a battery. It runs out, you get tired, you get stressed, and the battery dies. But love, responsibility for a helpless being, those are generators. They create energy. He realized that if he wanted to be a great example, which is the phrase he uses, he had to kill the outlaw. You can't be a rebellious, angry agent of chaos and a stable, loving father at the same time. The roles are incompatible.
You can't burn down the village and raise a child in it.
You absolutely cannot.
He writes that he wanted to leave a legacy of struggle, courage, discipline, and resilience. Notice he didn't say wealth, safety, and comfort.
That's the warrior ethos again. He knows the world is hard. He knows, because he's been the black sheep, that life can chew you up. He doesn't want to protect his kids from the struggle. He wants to equip them for it. He wants to give them armor, not a bubble.
And he put in the work to do that. This detail blew my mind. He mentions in the text that he wrote over 100 articles and even a book specifically for his children.
That is an incredible output of legacy material. I mean, that is serious dedication.
He says he wrote them contemplating life with his sons in mind. It's like he's writing his own instruction manual. He's saying, look, I figured this stuff out the hard way. Let me write it down so you don't have to make the same mistakes.
He explicitly says he wants to instill a different relationship with failure and struggles. Think about that phrasing for a second. A relationship with failure.
A relationship with it.
Most of us have a relationship with failure that is toxic.
Sure.
We fear it, we hide from it, we let it define us. If we fail, we are failures. Jimmy wants his sons to dance with it. He wants them to see failure as data, not as a verdict. Okay, I failed. What did I learn? Next.
And this brings us to a really fascinating contradiction in the man himself. We're reading this very sensitive, thoughtful, introspective text. And we picture, I don't know, what do you picture? A philosopher in a tweed jacket, a gentle poet with reading glasses.
Yeah, right. We picture a soft-spoken academic, maybe sipping tea.
But then we get into the comments section, and there's an interaction that completely shatters that image.
The comment from MJ.
Yes. MJ is a reader who chimes in and compliments Jimmy on being emotional, and Jimmy replies with a correction, almost a warning. He says, I am not an overly emotional man as I stand 6'5" or 260 pounds. I'm more of a beast than a teddy bear.
Let's just pause on those stats for a moment. 6'5", 260 pounds.
That's huge.
That is NFL size. That is defensive end size. That is bouncer who throws you out with one hand size. He refers to himself as a beast.
It completely recontextualizes the angry young man thing, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When a 150-pound guy is angry, it's annoying. Maybe he's loud. When a 260-pound guy is full of pain and acting like an outlaw, that is genuinely terrifying. That is a dangerous human being. That is a person who can do serious damage.
So when he talks about taming the demons, he's talking about restraining a significant amount of physical power.
It makes the gentleness of the obituary even more impressive. It is not the gentleness of someone who is weak. It is the gentleness of a monster who has chosen to be civilized. There's a quote, I think it's Jordan Peterson or maybe a derivation of Jung, that says something like, a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control.
That sounds exactly like Jimmy. He's the beast under control.
And he admits it in the comment, I'm more of a beast, but I do have 3 sons, and I need to be a great example to them. He is redefining masculinity for his boys. He's showing them that being a beast physically doesn't mean you have to be an emotional stone. You can be the biggest guy in the room and still write poetry about your death.
Which is a perfect segue into section 3, Memento Mori, the philosophy itself. Because this whole exercise, writing the obituary, the blog post, it's all about perspective.
It's an alignment tool. It's a way to check your compass.
In the comments, there's a user with the incredible handle Mabutuchus.
The internet never disappoints with the names, does it?
Never. So Mabutuchus asks the million-dollar question. Have you found any perspective shifts or insights from doing this? Basically, was this just creative writing, or did it actually change you?
And Jimmy gives 2 very distinct takeaways.
Takeaway number 1. Life is really short when put in this perspective.
That's the classic memento mori realization. When you look at a timeline from birth to death, the middle part, the part we are in right now, feels incredibly brief. It just compresses the timeline. The 80 years we hope to get feels like a blink.
And then takeaway number 2, which is the actionable one. We allow way too much to bog us down.
This is the don't sweat the small stuff principle, but on steroids. When you are writing your obituary, you realize that the traffic jam you sat in yesterday doesn't make the cut. The rude comment from a coworker doesn't make the cut. The fact that your coffee was cold does not make the cut.
So why are we letting those things ruin our day?
Exactly. If it's not going to be in the biographical summary of your entire existence, it shouldn't be renting space in your head today. He's using the obituary as a filter. He holds up an annoyance and asks, does this matter for the final draft? If no, let it go. Drop it.
But then we hit the turbulence. There is a paragraph in this obituary that is genuinely provocative. It challenges the reader. It's about grief. And honestly, when I first read it, I kind of recoiled a little bit.
The selfish paragraph.
Yeah. Jimmy writes, Jimmy would not want folks to mourn him. He would call you all selfish for doing so, claiming you cry for you, not for me.
That word, selfish.
Yay.
It hits hard. Imagine being at a funeral, crying your eyes out because you lost your best friend or your dad, and the deceased stands up in the coffin and says, "Hey, you're being selfish."
It feels cold. It feels almost dismissive of the people who love him. It feels like he's saying their love is a burden or a mistake.
But let's look at it through the stoic lens he's seemingly applying here. He follows it up with, he would remind you that he's not sad or in pain.
Yeah.
His argument is logical. The dead are at rest. They have no needs, no wants, no suffering. The pain of grief is 100% experienced by the living.
Okay.
We cry because we miss their voice. We cry because we have a hole in our lives. We cry because we don't know how to move on.
So he's technically right. We are crying for ourselves.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
He's trying to absolve them of the need to mourn him. He's saying, don't waste your energy pitying me because I'm fine. I'm done. The race is over. I've crossed the finish line.
It's an attempt at stoic detachment. He's putting up the armor. I'm a beast. I'm strong. Death is nothing. Don't cry. It fits the outlaw persona, in a way. The tough guy who doesn't need pity.
Right. It's the philosophy of the high plains drifter. Right off into the sunset, don't look back.
But then the armor cracks. It doesn't just crack, it shatters into a million pieces.
The parenthetical.
He writes this whole stoic, don't cry for me speech, and then he adds, his only wish and hope after his death is for him to be able to kiss and hug his boys.
And then the note in brackets.
Writing that last sentence made me weep like a child.
That is the moment. That is the heartbeat of the entire piece. That is where the theory dies and the human lives.
It is the collision of the philosophy and the reality. You can be as stoic as you want, you can preach memento mori, you can call grief selfish all day long, but the biological reality of love, the desire to physically hold your children, to smell their hair, to feel their weight, that overrides all of it.
He calls himself a beast who stands 6'5". And yet the mere hypothetical thought of not being able to hug his kids brings him to tears. Weep like a child. Not got a little misty. Wept like a child.
Wow.
It proves that the selfish comment wasn't about him being unfeeling. It was about him trying to be strong for them. But the love is just too big to be contained by the strongman act. The dam broke.
The commenter MJ, the same one who asked about the emotional stuff, really latches onto this. MJ writes, for a full-grown man to even allow himself to feel this deep compassion, but to actually admit you're a human being with emotions, crazy.
MJ is highlighting the societal barrier here. Men, especially beast-sized men, aren't supposed to admit they wept. They could admit they were angry, they could admit they were outlaws, but weeping, that's taboo, that's weakness.
And Jimmy's response to MJ is a masterclass in parenting. He says, allowing yourself to feel at the right time is important to teach them.
At the right time. That's the key. He's not saying walk around crying all day. He's not saying be an emotional wreck. He's saying when the moment demands it, when you are facing the magnitude of life and death and love, you feel it. You don't suppress it, because if you suppress the grief, you suppress the love. They come from the same well. If you numb the pain, you numb the joy.
He's teaching his boys that emotional range is a strength, not a weakness. He's teaching them that you can be big and strong and still have a heart that breaks.
He's integrating the shadow and the light. He keeps the strength of the beast for protection, but he keeps the heart of the child for connection. That is a fully realized human being.
Okay, now we have to take a quick detour into the lighter side of things, because the internet, in its infinite wisdom, manages to bring a sitcom into a conversation about death.
The Seinfeld connection. I love this part.
So MJ, in the comments, starts off with, okay, I have to get this nagging Seinfeld comedy of Jimmy likes working out stricken from my mind before continuing.
For those who don't know, or who might be too young, there's a famous Seinfeld character named Jimmy, who refers to himself in the third person. He wears those special training shoes and says things like, Jimmy's down. Jimmy likes the velvet fog. Jimmy's gonna get you.
And because Jimmy Perez wrote his obituary in the third person, Jimmy lived a confused life, Jimmy decided to change. MJ couldn't help but hear that sitcom voice in their head.
It's hilarious, but it's also a perfect example of how our brains work. We use humor to deflect the heaviness of death. It's a defense mechanism. MJ is reading this heavy, profound stuff about death and weeping, and their brain offers up a Seinfeld clip to break the tension. Too much feelings, here's a joke.
But I actually think it serves a purpose here. It grounds the exercise. If this were just 100% Gothic philosophy, it would feel pretentious. It would feel like a sermon. The Seinfeld joke reminds us that we are real people living in a pop culture world.
And MJ pivots quickly from the joke to something very substantial. MJ mentions a psychology class where they actually did this exact assignment.
Yes, this was a great validation. MJ writes that the students had to write their own obituaries, and the result was a quiet classroom.
The crazy part was how quiet the classroom was while everyone seriously contemplated the way the world would view them. That silence is powerful.
What is happening in that silence? What do you think that is?
The ego is dissolving. Usually our ego is chatting away, telling us how great we are, justifying our mistakes. I yelled at my spouse because I was tired. I didn't finish that project because my boss is a jerk. The ego is a lawyer, but when you have to write the obituary, the excuses fall away. You can't write, he was a great guy except when he was tired. You have to look at the net result. The silence is the sound of people realizing the gap between who they think they are and who they actually are.
MJ calls it a tool for alignment, a great way of taking a good, hard look at yourself.
Alignment is the perfect word. Is your behavior aligned with your desired legacy? Jimmy Perez realized his wasn't. His behavior, the outlaw, was misaligned with his desired legacy, the father. So he used the obituary to snap them back into alignment. He forced the pieces to fit.
Which brings us to our final section, the legacy and the takeaway. Jimmy leaves us with a specific request, a dying request from a living man.
It's the call to action.
He writes, his only dying request to you all was for you not to forget that at any given time you can stop, say no more, and change your entire life if you chose to.
At any given time, that is the core thesis of this entire deep dive.
We tend to think we need a catalyst. We need New Year's Day, we need a milestone birthday, we need a medical diagnosis, we need the stars to align.
We wait for permission. We wait for the universe to give us a sign. We wait for rock bottom. And Jimmy is saying, you don't need a sign, you just need a decision. You can be in the middle of the downhill spiral, just like he was. You can be the angry young man, and on a random Tuesday, in the middle of a run, you can just stop. You can say, no more.
But he adds that qualifier, if you chose to.
It is a choice. And as we discussed, it's a costly choice. It took him many years. It cost him his old identity. It cost him the comfort of his anger. But the possibility is always there. The door is never locked. It's just heavy.
And I love his definition of success. He explicitly says he figured he would be forgotten like many. He's not trying to be Napoleon. He's not trying to have a statue in the park or a wiki page.
He has accepted his mortality. He knows the name Jimmy Perez will eventually fade. He knows the paper will yellow and crumble.
So where does he live on? He says his success is living on within his most precious creation, his 3 sons.
That is biological immortality. It's legacy in its purest form. If I can pass my software, my values, my resilience, my courage into these new hardware units, my sons, then the code doesn't die. The Jimmy Perez operating system keeps running, even if the original machine is gone.
The Jimmy Perez operating system. I like that. Version 2.0 is running on Isaiah, JJ, and Gabriel.
Exactly. And notice the optimism in his final promise to them. He left them a dog, a wife, and a promise that the best of their life has yet to happen.
That is extreme optimism coming from a guy who started with extreme pessimism. He went from dead or in prison to the best is yet to come.
That is the arc of the hero's journey. He went into the underworld, he fought the dragon, his own demons, and he came back with the elixir, hope, for his village, his family. He earned that optimism. It wasn't given to him. He forged it.
So let's synthesize this. We've unpacked the blog, the comments, the philosophy. What is the Jimmy Perez method? If my listener wants to apply this today, what are the steps?
I see it as a 3-step process.
Okay, step 1.
Step 1 is radical honesty. You have to admit where you are, even if it's ugly. You have to write the before picture. I am angry. I am failing. I am distant. You cannot fix what you will not acknowledge. Jimmy had to admit he was an outlaw before he could become a father. You have to look in the mirror and not blink. Step 2 is the memento moriata. You have to look at your life from the perspective of the end. Write the obituary. What stays? What goes? What is just noise? This is the filter. It helps you identify what is selfish grief versus what is hugging your boys. It clarifies what actually matters. It separates the signal from the noise.
And step 3?
Step 3 is the pivot. You have to accept that you are the author. You aren't just reading a script handed to you by your parents or your past. You are writing it. Jimmy realized that the character of Jimmy could be rewritten. You have to be willing to kill off the old character to let the new one breathe.
You have to kill the black sheep to save the shepherd.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yes.
The rebel had to die so the father could live.
Man, that is heavy, but it's so empowering. It takes the fear out of death and turns it into fuel for life.
It's the ultimate life hack. Use the end to fix the middle.
And I love his sign-off, the way he ends the post. Y'all have a great day, live responsibly, and always remember that Jimmy loved you all deeply.
Live responsibly. It's such a simple phrase. But coming from a guy who lived irresponsibly for the first half of his life, it carries so much weight. It doesn't mean pay your taxes or recycle. It means take responsibility for your soul.
It means own your story.
Precisely. Don't be a passive observer of your own life. Be the author.
So here is where we leave you, the listener. We want to leave you with a challenge inspired by Jimmy Perez and his Tuesday run.
The challenge is this. If you went home tonight, sat down at your computer, and wrote your obituary right now, as you are, would it be a lie?
Oof, that's the question.
Would you have to fluff it up? Would you have to leave out the downhill spiral you're currently in? Would you have to invent virtues you don't actually practice? Would you write, "He was a present father," when you know you're actually always on your phone?
If the answer is yes, if your current obituary would be a lie, then you have work to do. You are out of alignment.
But the good news is the ink isn't dry yet. You are listening to this. You are still here. The run isn't over.
You can still say no more.
You can still change the script.
Jimmy Perez did it. The beast became the writer. The outlaw became the dad. You can change the story.
Just don't wait until the run is over, because eventually the run does end.
Exactly. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Go hug your people.
And live responsibly.
See you next time.